Before you judge another person, let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone who seemed kind at first, only to reveal a completely different side months later? Or someone everyone disliked, who later became one of the most genuine people you knew? That's because most people don't reveal themselves through words. They reveal themselves through patterns. And the Stoics understood this thousands of years ago. Today, you'll discover the first 6 hidden truths that reveal who people really are. And trust me, the final lesson in this video changes everything. Have you ever looked at someone and felt there was much more beneath the surface than they were willing to show? Maybe they smiled while carrying invisible pain. Maybe they sounded confident while quietly battling fear. Most of us spend our lives listening to what people say, yet the greatest truths are rarely spoken aloud. The ancient Stoics believed that understanding human nature is one of life's greatest advantages. When you learn to see beyond appearances, you stop being easily deceived. You become calmer, wiser, and far more compassionate. Suddenly, people's actions begin to make sense in ways they never did before. In this video, we'll uncover 18 timeless insights about human behavior. These lessons are divided into 3 parts, and each one builds on the previous one. If you skip ahead, you'll miss the foundation that makes the later lessons truly powerful. Stay with me until the end, because these truths won't only change how you see other people, they may completely change how you see yourself. From childhood, we're taught that words reveal the truth. We assume that if someone speaks confidently, smiles warmly, or promises loyalty, we know who they are. But the Stoics warned us against making judgments too quickly. Human beings often speak from emotion, habit, fear, or desire rather than from genuine understanding. Most people aren't intentionally dishonest. They're simply protecting themselves. Over the years, they create an image they believe the world will accept. They wear emotional armor without even realizing it. The cheerful person may secretly fear loneliness. The strong person may be exhausted from carrying burdens in silence. The quiet person may have countless thoughts they never feel safe enough to express. This doesn't make people fake. It makes them human. Every person develops defenses long before they understand why they need them. The challenge is learning to recognize the person behind those defenses. The first lesson is simple yet profound. Every person wears a mask. People rarely reveal their complete selves because life teaches them that vulnerability can be dangerous. Rejection, criticism, embarrassment, and disappointment encourage people to hide parts of who they truly are. They present the version of themselves that feels safest. But no mask is perfect. Sooner or later, tension begins to appear. Watch carefully when someone becomes uncomfortable. Notice when their confidence suddenly fades or when their expression changes for just a moment. Those small cracks often reveal far more than hours of conversation ever could. The real person usually appears when maintaining the mask becomes difficult. The second lesson is that people often criticize what they secretly struggle with themselves. Have you noticed how some individuals constantly point out the flaws of others? The person obsessed with accusing everyone of arrogance may secretly wrestle with insecurity. The one who continually speaks about dishonesty may be avoiding uncomfortable truths in their own life. The Stoics understood that our strongest emotional reactions often reveal unfinished battles within ourselves. Instead of asking why someone criticizes others so much, ask what inner conflict might be creating that criticism. Sometimes judgment is less about the other person and more about the hidden fears of the one speaking. The third lesson is that silence often reveals more than conversation. Many people believe that understanding comes from asking more questions. Yet some of the deepest answers arrive during moments when words disappear. Watch what happens when difficult topics arise. Does someone suddenly become quiet? Do they quickly change the subject? Do they answer with rehearsed phrases instead of honest reflection? Silence is not always empty. Sometimes it protects the wounds people aren't ready to face. What someone refuses to discuss can reveal as much as what they eagerly explain. Learning to notice these moments helps you understand not only others, but also yourself. We all have conversations we avoid for reasons we rarely admit. The fourth lesson reminds us to be careful around those who constantly advertise their goodness. True character rarely demands attention. A genuinely kind person doesn't need applause for every generous act. Yet some people continuously announce their virtues, correct everyone around them, and insist on proving how morally superior they are. The Stoics recognize that excessive displays of righteousness can sometimes hide pride instead of wisdom. When someone spends all their energy convincing others of their goodness, it is worth asking why they need that approval so badly. Real integrity speaks quietly. It doesn't need an audience. The fifth lesson changes the way we think about dishonesty. Before people deceive others, they usually deceive themselves. How often have you heard someone insist they're completely fine while every part of their behavior suggested otherwise? Many people repeat comforting stories until those stories become their reality. They convince themselves that they're over the pain, that they no longer care, or that nothing bothers them anymore. These aren't always deliberate lies. They're emotional shields that help people continue moving forward. If someone's words and actions don't match, don't rush to condemn them. Sometimes the contradiction reveals an internal struggle they haven't yet recognized. The truth usually escapes through inconsistency. The sixth lesson teaches us something surprising about confidence. Those who constantly feel the need to prove themselves are often fighting hidden feelings of inadequacy. The person who endlessly lists achievements, dominates every discussion, or constantly seeks recognition may not be driven by confidence at all. They may simply be trying to silence an inner voice that tells them they're not enough. Authentic confidence doesn't compete with everyone else. It doesn't need to announce itself. It remains steady without demanding validation. Whenever someone desperately seeks power, admiration, or control, look beyond the performance. You may discover not arrogance, but fear, a person still searching for the security they never found. These first 6 lessons are not invitations to judge people more harshly. They are invitations to understand them more deeply. Once you begin seeing the hidden fears beneath human behavior, your anger slowly turns into compassion. You stop reacting only to appearances and begin recognizing the struggles that shape every action. And this is only the beginning. In the next part, we'll explore 6 more powerful insights that reveal how fear, insecurity, control, and hidden emotional wounds quietly influence nearly every decision people make. Once you understand these patterns, you'll never observe human behavior the same way again. By now, you've probably started noticing something remarkable. People are becoming easier to understand, not because they're changing, but because you're learning where to look. The words they speak matter far less than the patterns they repeat. Behind every reaction lies an emotion, and behind every emotion is a deeper story. The Stoics believe that wisdom begins when we stop judging appearances and start examining causes. Every behavior grows from something unseen. Every habit has a root. If you learn to recognize those roots, you won't simply understand people. You'll understand the forces that quietly shape their lives. Let's continue with the next 6 timeless lessons. The 7th lesson is this: most decisions are driven by hidden fear. People often believe they act from confidence, ambition, or logic. But if you look closely, fear is usually standing in the background. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being abandoned, fear of not being enough. Think about the person who constantly explains themselves, even when no explanation is necessary. Or someone who agrees with everyone simply to avoid conflict. Others dominate every conversation because silence makes them uncomfortable. These actions may seem completely different, yet they often come from the same place: a fear of losing acceptance or control. When everyone understands someone's behavior, don't immediately ask what they want. Ask yourself what they might be afraid of losing. That question often reveals far more than anything they say aloud. The 8th lesson teaches us that constant criticism usually reflects an inner struggle. Have you noticed how some people always find faults in everyone around them? They criticize appearances, personalities, choices, or success. At first, it seems they're simply observant, but repeated judgment often reveals something much deeper. People frequently attack qualities they secretly struggle to accept within themselves. Someone who mocks emotional people may be uncomfortable with their own emotions. Someone who constantly speaks against pride may secretly crave recognition. The target of their criticism changes, but the real conflict remains inside them. Instead of becoming defensive when someone judges others harshly, quietly ask yourself what pain could be creating that judgment. Sometimes criticism says far more about the speaker than the person being criticized. The ninth lesson reminds us that confidence and certainty are not always the same thing. Some people appear completely unshakable. They always have answers. They always seem certain. They speak with authority and rarely admit mistakes. Yet, genuine confidence is surprisingly quiet. When someone constantly feels the need to prove their intelligence, defend every opinion, or appear perfect, they may actually be protecting themselves from feelings they don't want anyone else to see. Deep inside, they fear being exposed as inadequate. The truly confident person doesn't need to convince everyone else. They accept that they don't know everything, and that acceptance gives them peace. Confidence grows from self-acceptance, not from endless performance. The 10th lesson is one you'll begin noticing everywhere. People often reveal the truth through exaggeration. Listen carefully when someone repeatedly says, "I don't care what anyone thinks," or "nothing ever bothers me." Statements that sound absolute often hide the exact opposite emotion. Exaggeration usually appears when someone is trying to silence an uncomfortable truth inside themselves. The louder the declaration, the more carefully you should observe the behavior that follows. This doesn't mean people are intentionally lying. It simply means that emotions are often more honest than words. Human beings naturally try to protect themselves by projecting certainty where doubt already exists. The 11th lesson focuses on the desire for control. Some people need every detail to go exactly as planned. They struggle with uncertainty, become frustrated by small changes, and try to organize every situation around them. At first glance, this may look like discipline or strength, but many times, the desire to control the outside world reflects inner chaos. When someone feels emotionally overwhelmed, controlling their environment becomes a way to create temporary stability. If everything around them stays predictable, they feel safer inside. Rather than seeing controlling people as naturally powerful, consider the possibility that they're carrying burdens few people recognize. Sometimes the strongest need for control comes from the deepest fear of losing it. The 12th lesson reminds us to look beyond performance. Today's world encourages people to constantly display success, happiness, confidence, and achievement. Many spend enormous energy creating an image they hope others will admire. But appearances can be misleading. The person who constantly seeks attention may actually feel invisible. The one who never stops proving their worth may secretly believe they have none. Endless performance often grows from an emptiness that applause can never truly satisfy. The Stoics encouraged us to build character rather than reputation. Reputation depends on other people's opinions. Character depends only on our own actions. Those who truly know themselves no longer need to perform for the approval of strangers. Their peace comes from within, not from constant recognition. As these lessons come together, you begin seeing a different picture of humanity. The interrupting coworker may simply fear being ignored. The controlling parent may secretly fear losing the people they love. The person who boasts constantly may still be fighting battles that began many years ago. Understanding these patterns doesn't make you naive. It makes you wise. Instead of reacting with frustration, you respond with insight. Instead of assuming the worst, you recognize the invisible struggles that shape human behavior. This is one of the greatest gifts Stoicism offers. It teaches us that behind almost every difficult person is an unseen burden. Recognizing that burden doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it allows us to respond with clarity instead of anger. And we're not finished yet. In the final part, we'll uncover the last 6 truths, perhaps the most powerful of all. You'll discover how childhood experiences continue shaping adult behavior, why envy often hides admiration, why repeated habits reveal hidden wounds, and how learning to understand others ultimately becomes the path to understanding yourself. By now, you've probably realized that understanding people has very little to do with memorizing clever psychological tricks. It comes from learning to see what most people overlook. Every habit, every emotional reaction, every repeated behavior leaves a trail. The Stoics believe that those who observe carefully gain a wisdom that cannot be learned from word alone. The final 6 lessons take us even deeper. They reveal not only why people behave the way they do, but also how our own hidden wounds quietly shape our lives. The 13th lesson is this: people often speak from pain before they speak from reason. We like to believe that our opinions are built on pure logic, yet emotions usually arrive long before rational thought. A painful experience can shape a belief that lasts for decades. Someone who has experienced betrayal may insist that trust is impossible. Another person who has known constant disappointment may convince themselves that hope is dangerous. On the surface, these sound like carefully considered opinions. In reality, they are often protective walls built around old wounds. Instead of arguing with someone's beliefs, try asking yourself what experiences may have shaped them. Behind many strong opinions is a story that was never fully healed. This simple shift changes everything. You stop seeing difficult conversations as battles to win and begin seeing them as opportunities to understand another human being. The 14th lesson reminds us that true character appears when power is optional. It is easy to be respectful toward those who can benefit us. It is much harder to show kindness to someone who has nothing to offer in return. Watch how people treat those who cannot improve their reputation or increase their success. Notice how they respond to weakness, mistakes, or vulnerability. The person who humiliates others to feel powerful is usually fighting a battle within themselves. Those who mock weakness often fear their own. But the individual who responds with patience instead of cruelty demonstrates a strength that cannot be faked. Stoicism teaches that real power is measured by self-control, not domination. Anyone can react with anger. Only a disciplined mind can respond with compassion. The 15th lesson explains why some people constantly seek attention. Have you ever met someone who always wants to be noticed? They dominate conversations, chase recognition, or feel uncomfortable whenever the spotlight moves elsewhere. At first glance, this may appear to be confidence. But beneath the surface often lies something very different, a fear of becoming invisible. Many people spend years trying to earn the attention they never received when they needed it most. They confuse being noticed with being valued. They hope that applause will fill an emptiness that only genuine self-acceptance can heal. This doesn't mean attention is wrong. It simply reminds us that endless validation can never replace inner peace. The 16th lesson may be one of the hardest to accept. Sometimes the people who attack others the most are secretly admiring what they see. Envy rarely announces itself honestly. Instead, it disguises itself as criticism, sarcasm, or constant negativity. When someone tears down another person's success, confidence, or freedom, ask yourself whether they are really expressing hatred or disappointment with their own life. It is often easier to criticize qualities we wish we possessed than to admit we long for them ourselves. This lesson is valuable because it protects your own peace. Once you recognize that many insults are rooted in another person's struggle, you stop allowing every opinion to disturb your mind. The 17th lesson teaches us that repeated behavior usually begins long before adulthood. Many adults believe they are making completely independent choices, yet they continue repeating emotional patterns formed years earlier. The child who never felt heard may become an adult who constantly interrupts others. The person who was punished whenever they showed emotion may grow into someone who hides every feeling behind logic. Someone who had to earn love through achievement may spend a lifetime believing they are valuable only when they succeed. These patterns are rarely conscious. They become automatic ways of surviving. Understanding this doesn't remove personal responsibility. Instead, it gives us the awareness needed to break unhealthy cycles instead of passing them on. The 18th and final lesson brings every previous insight together. People reveal themselves through patterns, not isolated moments. Anyone can pretend for a day. Anyone can hide their true emotions during a single conversation. But repeated actions eventually tell the real story. The person who always withdraws when relationships become close, the individual who never rests because silence feels uncomfortable, or the one who repeatedly pushes others away before they can be rejected. All of these behaviors are messages waiting to be understood. The Stoics encouraged careful observation because patterns expose what words often conceal. They show us where fear lies, where pain remains unresolved, and where healing is still needed. When you begin seeing these patterns, something remarkable happens. You stop taking every harsh word personally. You stop assuming every difficult person is your enemy. You stop reacting to appearances and begin responding to reality. This doesn't make you weak. It makes you emotionally free. The greatest victory is not learning how to control other people. It is learning how to remain steady regardless of how they behave. Once you understand that everyone is carrying battles you cannot see, compassion naturally replaces resentment. But perhaps the greatest lesson isn't about other people at all. As you recognize these 18 truths, you may have noticed pieces of yourself. Perhaps you saw your own fears hidden behind confidence. Maybe you recognized old habits that still influence your decisions today. Or perhaps you discovered that some of the judgments you've made about others were reflections of struggles within yourself. This is where Stoicism becomes more than philosophy. It becomes a mirror. The purpose of wisdom is never to expose the flaws of others. It is to reveal the places where we still need to grow. Every insight you gain about human nature becomes an invitation to become more patient, more self-aware, and more disciplined. The ancient Stoics believed that the strongest person is not the one who wins every argument or dominates every room. The strongest person is the one who understands both themselves and others without allowing anger, pride, or fear to rule their actions. That is the path toward lasting peace. So before you judge someone, pause for a moment. Look beyond the words. Observe the patterns. Search for the fear beneath the behavior and the wound beneath the fear. You may discover that the person standing before you isn't pretending to be someone else. They're simply trying to survive in the only way they know. And perhaps, if you're completely honest, you'll realize you've been doing the same. If this journey has changed the way you see human nature, let me know in the comments. Which of these 18 Stoic lessons spoke to you the most? Your experience may encourage someone else who is walking the same path. And if you're ready to keep growing in wisdom, self-mastery, and inner peace, subscribe and join us for more timeless Stoic teachings. Every lesson brings you one step closer to becoming the calmest, strongest, and wisest version of yourself.